we're pretty excited.
I think the G investors win twice. I think they win from a capital allocation standpoint, and they win by creating something more valuable with Brian.
A $30 billion media deal was struck this week as cable giant Comcast reached an agreement to acquire NBC from General Electric. Comcast will control 51% of the new joint venture. GE is the parent of the company that produces this program. This is a significant story in a business landscape still feeling the effects of a financial crisis. Joining me now is New York Times chief mergers and acquisitions reporter and deal book editor Andrew Ross Sorkin, author of Too Big to Fail. Andrew, great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Congratulations on this book. This is a fantastic book, which I'll get to in a moment. But there hasn't been a big media deal in quite some time. What do you think this means for the business and for viewers?
I think it's going to do a couple of things. On the cable front, it's going to change the pricing pressure and might actually, I don't want to say bring down prices, but one of the big issues has been ESPN and sports and how much that costs. And now Comcast and NBC together might have some pricing pressure to put some pressure on that price. So it could come down. It also may actually impact Hollywood. It's something people haven't really been thinking about, but part of NBC Universal is the Universal portion of the business, and there's always been a conversation about what they call the windows. When a movie goes out and then there's a DVD a couple months later and then there's cable a couple months later. Now that the Comcast is going to own all of that, they may actually be able to change the windows and change the model. So I think there's actually going to be some interesting results from all of this.
So the movie will be distributed everywhere at once, maybe?
It could be that they do the movie in the movie theater, and immediately, a week later, you can get it on demand instead of on DVD. Right, so I think there's going to be some shifts there.
That's interesting. That's a really good point. So your book, Too Big to Fail, is a fly-on-the-wall account of what went on last fall. You got Hank Paulson, as well as former Lehman Brothers CEO Dick Fuld, major characters. Right. What surprised you about the story as you pieced together this narrative?
I think two things surprised me. One was actually how close to the edge we really were, the abyss, and what that really looked like. I think as the time, as I was reporting, and we were all reporting this, I don't think I realized how close we came and what that really meant. The idea that Morgan Stanley was days away from filing for bankruptcy, that Goldman Sachs could file next, that actually GE, I mean, talk about this deal, GE was considered the next domino after Goldman Sachs. Yeah. And the idea that big and small companies weren't going to be able to make payroll, and that was the conversation that was happening inside Treasury, and that these CEOs were back and forth with each other literally hours away from feeling as if they were going to falter.
That is so extraordinary. Was it hard to look at the events retrospectively? Was it too soon? I mean, you did this immediately.
I think that it's hard to really gain perspective, and we're going to need still 5, 10, 20 years. I mean, historians will hopefully look at this, and what I was hoping to do with the book more than anything was really just try to reconstruct the record, because even though there had been an enormous amount of reporting on this topic, I wanted to be able to try to bring the reader inside the room, to really understand what the conversations were, what the decision-making was, so that when Hank Paulson was on the phone with Dick Fuld, what was said, so that we can actually make our own decision, frankly, about how we feel about whether this worked or not.
You did a great job on it. It's the best book on the subject.
I appreciate that very, very much.
So you included anecdotes about Wall Street's tin ear when it comes to compensation, which was a good part of it, and wealth perception in general. Right. Now, we've got Wall Street bonuses back up again as we speak. How has the financial crisis impacted economic classes?
Well, it's clearly impacted economic classes in that, in an odd way, not that the rich have gotten richer, because many of the rich have gotten less rich, but there is clearly a disconnect, and we're seeing that in terms of the popular outrage, in part because of the compensation and the bonuses. But the larger issue, I think, is that the ethos on Wall Street hasn't changed. And a year later, you would have imagined that that culture might have shifted. You would have imagined that there might have been some more reform, regulatory reform, or even reform coming out of the corner office. And I think, and maybe it's sad in a way, we haven't gotten that on either front. And as the economy continues to stabilize and gets better, and the farther we get away from the crisis, I suspect it's going to be harder and harder to change that culture and change that ethos.
Could the crisis have been avoided?
I think about that question all the time, and that's a big question I think that the book raises. I'm not sure it could have been avoided, because I think many of the seeds of this debacle were sown years and years and years ago. I think it could have been mitigated, and I think there is going to be a large question over the years about whether they could have mitigated better, whether certain decisions by the government ended up undermining confidence and exacerbating problems, which I suspect they did at certain points. But at the same time, you know, you can blame a lot of these people for bringing us to the brink, but I imagine that history will actually look more fondly upon some of these people when it comes to bringing us from the brink.
So how will history...
It's going to be a very mixed picture.
How will history report on Hank Paulson? What will his legacy be?
It's probably too early to tell, but I actually think that people are going to give him more credit for bringing us out of this, given what's happened today, given the fact that Bank of America is returning the TARP money, given the fact that we're getting some of this back, and given the fact that, frankly, the economy is in much better shape and we didn't go off that cliff that many of us expected.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew, great to talk with you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate
Andrew
it.
Ross Sorkin here in the studio. Up next on the Wall Street Journal Report, how merry are consumers this December? We'll see what toy shoppers are spending their money on. And then important price news if your gift list includes French hens, turtle doves, or leaping lords. They may cost you more than you